Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to the Diesel Technology Forum's Global Web Forum, Clean Diesel Power Meeting the Climate Challenge for COP21 and Beyond. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. As a reminder, this event is going to be recorded. So shortly after the conclusion of this event, you'll receive an email with a link to the recorded presentation and files, and they're also going to be available on our website at dieselforum.org/webinars. We're going to have time for questions at the end, but we encourage you to ask questions at any time during the presentation. You can ask them during the event during the Q&A box. So just type them in there, and they'll not be viewable by any other attendees, and we will address them by the end of the session. We're also going to be live tweeting this event, so we encourage you to join in on that conversation using Facebook and Twitter, using the hashtags CleanDiesel and COP21. And I'd now like to turn the call over to our speakers for today, Ezra Finken, who's the Diesel Technology Forum's Director of Policy and External Relations, and the Diesel Technology Forum's Executive Director, Alan Schaefer.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Kristen, let me just ask a quick technical question. Is the screen visible to everyone at this point?
We do see the pre-slide right now, but I don't think you're sharing your screen right now.
Okay, thank you.
So I would do share your screen.
Thank you.
Now it's coming up.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us today, and we welcome the opportunity to speak with everyone about our new generation of clean diesel technology. Today's session is meant to cover many issues relative to climate and technologies and fuels that will be needed to get us to where we need to go. You're just seeing a few catch-up slides now, and there we are. Thank you very much for the introductions, Kristen. And the Diesel Technology Forum is the host for today's session. You can find more out about the forum at our website, www.dieselforum.org. And you can see that our primary mission is one of education, of research, outreach, and work on policy issues relative to transportation, energy, the environment, and economics. The forum is a membership organization. We are fortunate to represent the leaders in clean diesel technology, and these are manufacturers and suppliers of advanced engines, emissions control systems, bio and renewable diesel fuels, and other technologies. Thank you to our members. Our program today will cover a number of areas, all around meeting the climate and clean air challenge. First, we will have our short introduction that you're hearing today, a bit about the forum, and we'll like to share with you some thoughts about diesel technology. We will also then move into a discussion about the challenge that is about to be discussed in Paris in just about a week, and the technologies, and then how the U.S. will meet its commitment and this climate challenge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then we will explore which technology solutions may be able to help achieve these objectives. We will share with you some case studies about diesel technology in action around the world, how it impacts the economy, quality of life, and key aspects of mobility. And then we'll wrap up with an opportunity for some discussion and concluding remarks at the very end of today's session. With that, let me turn it over to our Director of Policy and External Relations, Ezra Finken.
Thank you very much, Alan. On the next slide, you can see how the globe or the world will meet the climate challenge. It is led under the umbrella of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. This UN effort seeks to share information about each member nation's effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as mitigation measures to adopt to climate change. The urgency of the UNFCCC's work here has gathered new momentum recently as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, this is the expert research group under the UNFCCC umbrella, determined in 2013 that lasting devastation to the planet will likely occur if efforts are not taken to reduce or limit a warming planet to under 2 degrees centigrade by 2100. On the next slide, you'll see why Paris is important. So far, 196 signatories to the convention, as it's known, will bring to the table intended commitments taken to reduce each member nation's greenhouse gas emissions through something known as Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, or INDC. In addition to negotiations, negotiators will focus on discussing financial mechanisms to help developing nations achieve their commitments. Additionally, other UN agencies will discuss global policies to reduce emissions, including airline fuel economy and maritime issues, just to name a few, through the International Civil Aviation Organization as well as the International Maritime Organization. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how we got to Paris and why Paris is important. International climate commitments to limit greenhouse gas emissions really took off in 1997 as many nations signed the Kyoto Protocol on the convention to limit greenhouse gas emissions. Since that time, the signatories to that protocol, known as the Conference on the Parties, or COP, served as a forum to meet periodically to report on activities to reduce emissions and share best practices. The next Conference of the Parties, or COP21, the 21st meeting of the group, will meet in Paris to discuss a successor legal instrument under the umbrella of the UNFCCC to reduce greenhouse gas emissions with the goal of limiting global warming to just 2 degrees centigrade by 2100. On the next slide, we'll dive into a little bit about how the United States intends to meet its climate pledge. Again, the U.S. INDC, that's really the guts of the commitment, is intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to between 26 and 28% by 2025 relative to 2005 levels. That is the U.S. climate commitment. And here on this chart, you can see that information pulled from the International Energy Agency that's done some analysis on how exactly the U.S. will get to its climate commitment by 2025. Much of the U.S. commitment relies on regulations that are either promulgated or regulations that are proposed. The largest source of greenhouse gas emissions from the United States come from power plants. And the proposed Clean Power Plan seeks to reduce power plant emissions. Roughly half of the U.S. INDC will be achieved through the proposed Clean Power Plan. However, that plan faces growing legal and even political challenges that may undermine its contribution towards emissions reduction. That makes other features of the U.S. INDC in the commitment here that much more important. In the U.S., the second leading source of emissions, of greenhouse gas emissions, are attributable to transportation. Rules on the books pertaining to fuel economy standards for light-duty vehicles, the so-called CAFE standards, along with similar standards for heavy-duty commercial vehicles, the Phase 1 standards that are in effect for model year 2014 through 2018, and the proposed Phase 2 standards that build on the Phase 1 standard set to take place 2021 to model year 2027. Again, those are standards for heavy-duty vehicles, are estimated to contribute collectively to about 10% to meet the U.S. greenhouse gas emission reduction goal laid out in the U.S. INDC. And here, diesel really is expected to be a leading role as diesel engines and fuel power over 95% of these heavy-duty commercial vehicles. And diesel technology will be critical to deliver the estimated 1.25 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions reductions attributable to just the Phase 1 and proposed Phase 2 standard for heavy-duty commercial vehicles. But it's not just heavy-duty commercial vehicles. Diesel will also be a key technology to help meet the light-duty fuel economy targets, the so-called CAFE rules. While a small share of the passenger vehicle market today, diesel vehicles have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by over 9 million tons between 2005, that's the banner year for the reintroduction of diesel in the U.S. passenger vehicle market, to 2014. Expanded consumer interest in diesel cars, SUVs, and pickups in the U.S. will see equally impressive emission reductions into the future. In fact, the Obama administration's all-of-the-above energy policy forecasts some of the anticipated drop-off in fuel consumption from passenger vehicles as attributable to consumers switching from gasoline to diesel vehicles. So, in summary, diesel technology plays an important role in delivering the U.S. climate commitment to meet its INDC, as it's known.
Thank you, Ezra. This is Alan Schaefer speaking. Now we'd like to turn to which technologies will help achieve these greenhouse gas emission reductions. The complexity of the challenge to reduce climate change emissions is enormous, and the plan to reduce those emissions must be considerate of the near term and the longer term of various capabilities and technologies. We believe that some of the criteria that must be considered in the evaluation of which fuels and technologies, primarily for transport and industrial use, must be considered are here on this slide. Technologies that are available, affordable, reliable, proven, efficient, maintainable, and clean are ones that will play and should play a leading role in both the near-term and the long-term strategy as we work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions around the globe. From a transport perspective, we believe that the diversity of the challenge and the number of people that move around the world will require many fuels and technologies, and what works in one particular place will not necessarily work in another. And this represents the broad range of fuels and technologies now under consideration or even available in some parts of the world to power vehicles, engines, and equipment. We'd like to focus a bit more on the diesel technology part of this. And as Ezra noted previously, diesel plays a leading role in global commerce and the global economy. It is often referred to as the workhorse of the global economy and powering a wide range of different economic sectors, providing them the mobility necessary to move goods, to manufacture materials, and to really serve the needs of a growing population. As a result, the World Energy Outlook, in one of its most recent reports, identified that diesel fuel will remain the dominant growth fuel between now and 2035. This reflects its expanding use and needs around the globe as countries either industrialize and begin to utilize more construction equipment, can also be reflective of the increasing role of global transport of both raw materials and goods. Diesel technology has been on quite an evolution over the last 15 years. Beginning here in the U.S., we understand the energy efficiency capabilities of diesel engines as the most energy efficient internal combustion engine available. That has led to its position today as powering these key sectors of the economy. And in the last 15 years, we have worked to reduce emissions to near zero levels. Emissions of particulates, oxides of nitrogen, and other compounds from new engines are now near zero levels. Going forward, we are seeing diesel engines being investigated and modernized for increased efficiency, and hybridization is part of that, but also the use and expanded use of renewable biofuels. And where does the future take us from there? We are yet to envision that completely. However, we can expect an expanded use of diesel power throughout the globe. Being able to compete and provide an advanced technology and fuel in so many places to serve so many needs is essential, and diesel can do that because of its key attributes of being efficient, economical, powerful, and very low emissions today. It is also a fuel that is widely available throughout the world, and its fueling infrastructure, maintenance networks, and other supporting structures are well in place. The last 15 years in the U.S., we have been working to transform diesel to a clean technology, and this has involved three basic steps. First, the introduction of ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel. This provides a foundation from which advanced engine technology can be developed and manufactured. And finally, the use of advanced emissions control technology, such as particulate filters, catalysts, and selective catalytic reduction systems can be incorporated. Together, these three pieces make up the clean diesel technology that is available throughout the world today. One of the key factors of getting diesel to near clean has been the need for ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel. And as a result, we now see the availability of fuel in the U.S. Nationwide as our standard fuel and technology. Across the board, we can find these cleaner fuels being used in everything from passenger cars to the largest construction machines and equipment. And you can see the emissions progress that has been made with diesel from all kinds over the last almost 20 years now. This chart shows both the reduction in nitrogen oxide emissions and particulate emissions that have occurred in everything from off-road machines and equipment to locomotives and farm tractors. And you can see here that all of these lines converge near the x-axis or near zero. So today we are in a position of having diesel technology being very near zero emissions. And this positions the technology for the future. One of the key aspects of that future is an expanded use of renewable and advanced biofuels. And we believe that those will play a key role throughout the world in helping to make sure diesel is a sustainable energy technology in the future. One of the key attributes of diesel is its inherent energy efficiency and its energy density of its fuel. We recently evaluated what would happen if an iPhone were fueled by diesel. Looking at the energy intensity of the various fuels and technology, an iPhone today, if powered by diesel fuel, would last 10 days on a single charge. The typical average use today is approximately 1 day if powered by a lithium-ion battery, which of course the phones are powered by. This simple example provides an insight into why diesel power is going to continue to be an important part of the future in meeting the climate change objectives. And that is because of the energy density of the fuel and its efficient combustion by the diesel engine. We'd like to turn now to what is needed to help meet these global climate challenges relative to diesel technology particularly. First and foremost is the availability of ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel. This map shows the relative levels of diesel fuel sulfur around the world today. And you can see in the lightest blue areas in North America predominantly has very low sulfur diesel fuel. There are some parts of the world that are still using very high levels of, finding very high levels of sulfur in their diesel fuel, and parts in South America also in some of the higher ranges. But having ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel is critical to making future progress, both in reducing carbon emissions as well as reducing emissions of particulate and nitrogen oxides. One of the reasons that the global community is increasingly interested in reducing particulate emissions is because of the role of black carbon. Black carbon is identified as a short-lived climate pollutant, which means that it has a shorter lifespan in the upper atmosphere than does other greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide or some of the hydrofluorocarbons. So reductions in emissions of soot or black carbon can produce some near-term gains in terms of lower greenhouse gas emissions and warming conditions. Diesel engines are an emitter of black carbon or soot and particulates. All internal combustion engines emit some level of particulates into the air, but thanks to the new generation of clean diesel technology, we're seeing a dramatic reduction in the contribution to black carbon emissions. As you can see from this slide here, diesel makes up about a quarter of all the global sources of black carbon, with over half the sources coming from residential heating and cooking, such as depicted in the image there to the upper right. Of the diesel portion, the green circles, you can see that about 7.9% comes from those off-road vehicles, and about 16.6% come from on-road vehicles. How is diesel reducing its emissions of soot and black carbon emissions? Through the use of advanced emissions control technologies like catalysts and filters. Some of these catalysts and filters can be retrofitted or applied to existing engines and technology in such a way that it reduces their emissions without having to replace the whole machine or engine. This is a practice that works well when there is ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel available and the proper technology is matched to the proper engine. We have experience in the United States with modernizing and upgrading diesel engines of all kinds, from school buses to some of the largest marine and locomotive engines. It is an extensive process in many cases, and it is appropriate for some, but not all kinds of machines and equipment. And again, it does require the use and availability of ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel to be most effective. As we mentioned earlier, the use of diesel engines in the future will likely be with more renewable fuels and biodiesel fuel blends. These are part of the long history of diesel technology throughout the world, but using more renewable fuels in the future will help reduce carbon emissions as well as greenhouse gas emissions. The diesel engine, as one of its key attributes, has the capability to burn a wide variety of renewable diesel fuels from a range of feedstocks, including both raw and waste vegetable products and animal fats that have been processed in other ways. When properly prepared and made into a quality mixture, biodiesel fuel can be used in various concentrations and typically is found at a 20% level mixed with petroleum diesel. This has a positive impact on both emissions of particulates and nitrogen oxides, as well as carbon dioxide emissions. One of the more advanced renewable biodiesel fuels is fuels like diesel HPR. This is a hydrocarbon, basically a hydrocarbon replacement fuel. It is a drop-in substitute fuel for diesel, which means that the diesel engines do not require any kinds of adjustments or any specific changes to be able to utilize this fuel at various blends. California has mandated a low-carbon fuel as part of its fuel supply, and this advanced renewable biodiesel fuel, diesel HPR, is likely to be a major player as the state moves towards a lower carbon distillate fuel supply, as will blends of biodiesel up to 10%. But the use of advanced renewable and biodiesel fuels helps position the diesel engine for being part of a sustainable lower carbon future. We'd like to turn to a number of case studies and provide some additional insight on the importance of diesel going forward and how clean diesel technology can help meet the climate challenge. According to population statistics, the world population is expected to increase by approximately 1 billion people in the next 10 to 15 years. To feed those larger numbers of people around the world, we need to have more productive and efficient farming practices. And part of the productive and efficient farming practices comes from the tractors and machines and equipment that are used to plant and harvest the crops. And part of the efficiencies in lower fuel consumption and lower emissions come from how the machines connect and are integrated with the land and the use of the land. What we find today is that on large expansive acres in South America and other parts of the world, very large tractors today are doing the work of multiple tractors from 10 or 15 years ago because of their power and ability to cover large territory in a relatively shorter period of time. These are all powered by diesel engines, again because of its efficiency, reliability, and durability. And we believe that feeding the world and the expanding population going forward will require even more use of larger machines and equipment. And the newest generation machines are near zero emissions. And this will provide a great link to a sustainable future to feed a growing population. We have witnessed in recent times here in the United States some innovative efforts to transition quickly to lower carbon fuels. This is a most recent case study from the city of Oakland, California, located in near the San Francisco Bay Area. In this area, the city of Oakland made a commitment to begin using renewable diesel fuel in all of its city-owned vehicles. That's approximately 250 vehicles that use about 230,000 gallons of fuel per year. The city made this change to reduce its carbon footprint and meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets established by the city. All of the diesel engines and equipment that were in place were able to use this new fuel without any modifications, which delivered near immediate benefits for the city. One of the areas that we also see diesel playing a key part in the future in a sustainable carbon-reduced world is to provide expanded public services. With economic growth comes request and demand for public services such as public safety, public health, and clean drinking water and effective wastewater disposal and treatment. Diesel technology is a primary technology providing the power for many of the machines, equipment, and operations that go into these kind of activities, whether it's providing backup pumping stations for wastewater treatment plants, providing backup power for safe and clean drinking water wells, or helping to fight fires both on land and on water. Diesel engines play a unique role today and are expected to play a continued role there tomorrow. One of the areas that diesel is most interested, that we see, most interest in diesel being integrated with some advanced renewable technologies is to provide electricity to villages and people all around the world who don't have access to an electric grid. Many of these communities today in outlying places rely on diesel fuel to power generators to produce all of their electricity. This is shown to be, while an effective operation, it is one that is expensive and reduces the economic assets of those communities. What we have developing is an advanced integrated system known as a microgrid that provides the renewables that folks would like to have, which are solar and wind as prime sources of power, along with storage to store that energy. But they also need the reliability that comes from the diesel generator on days when there is not adequate wind or solar gain to power the necessary electric demands. Additional sources of energy are needed. This is where the diesel backup generator still plays an important role in this integrated system that is increasingly finding its way into various villages and cities in all parts of the world. And these units can run on diesel fuel, renewable diesel fuel, biodiesel fuel, and a various number of blends of fuel. So these are interesting technologies that will be, I think, in greater use in the future. Another area that we see the importance of diesel power in the future is enhancing mobility through the transport of large groups of people. Today in the U.S. and other parts of the world, diesel technology is the primary mover for public transportation systems, whether it's public transit buses or passenger rail in many parts of the world. These are locomotives and engines powered by diesel technology. Locomotive and bus engines are engines that now, new engines today are near zero emissions for both particulates and nitrogen oxide emissions. These are also engines that are more efficient and use less energy than previous versions. We also find that these technologies are important because they allow greater mobility for populations of people and less reliance on individual personal vehicles in particularly congested and populated areas. But the use of diesel power in public transportation, in buses and railroad is well documented. Similarly, when it comes to moving goods, raw materials to manufacturing and finished goods to market, there is a requirement for efficient and reliable technology, whether it's a modern tractor trailer such as pictured here, or smaller trucks that are serving communities in unpaved roads in other parts of the world. The technology that's powering these vehicles is typically the same kind of diesel engine. Trucks do come in all shapes and sizes, and they serve a wide variety of needs of economies in every corner of the world. And the majority of the medium and larger commercial trucks that you see, such as in this picture, are powered by diesel engines today, and we expect that to continue tomorrow. You understood earlier from Ezra Finken's comments about the role of diesel power in helping to meet the future greenhouse gas commitments of the United States. These are the kind of vehicles that are expected to contribute to achieving those emissions reductions and efficiency gains in the future. Another case study comes also from California. Just recently, San Francisco Mayor Lee announced that his entire city fleet was going to renewable diesel fuel as part of their commitment to combat climate change. Again, this is a major city in America that has chosen not to go to alternative fuels, but to utilize the existing diesel engine technology in all of their vehicles, and instead to change their fuel to a renewable diesel fuel, which provides substantial benefits in terms of emissions reduction and carbon reduction emissions, as you can see here. Another area of future interest is developing infrastructure and communities around the world to move earth, to build infrastructure of roads and bridges, to develop land, to establish the kind of circumstances for the use of infrastructure such as communications, public water and drinking water systems. These require the use of heavy machinery and equipment. Nearly all of these larger engines are powered by diesel, and more than 2/3 of all construction machines are powered by diesel engines. Fortunately here as well, advancements have been made in emissions and engine control technology that make the engines today near zero emissions, the new engines near zero emissions. Increasingly, these machines and manufacturers are exploring ways to even further increase their efficiency through the use of hybridization and electric drive components, such as in this electric drive Caterpillar bulldozer. In addition to the efficiency from the tractor and the engine itself, manufacturers are also expanding their ability to improve efficiency of the job and work site itself. This comes through telecommunications, connected vehicles and infrastructure, and relating the operation of the vehicle to the land and understanding exactly and precisely through satellites and other positioning how these machines can operate efficiently through doing fewer passes to make the same amount of work, thereby reducing fuel consumption and CO2 emissions. So efficiency comes from not only the vehicle, the engine, and the fuel, but also from the connectivity and integration with the land and the job site. We would now like to open the opportunity for discussion for anyone on the line that would like to participate and share any questions with us. Do we have any questions coming in?
We'd like to encourage you to ask a question via the Q&A box. And we do have a question. Are there any activities related to hydrogen-enhanced combustion?
Let's see. Certainly there are plenty of development going on looking at hydrogen as a fuel source in passenger cars, primarily at this point. I'm not aware that that same level of interest in the technology has progressed into commercial or heavy-duty on-road or off-road vehicles in a significant way. We are aware that some passenger car manufacturers have prototypes that are utilizing hydrogen, at least on a testing basis so far.
Here's another question, Alan. Are there any number studies on the impact on agriculture and environment of biodiesel?
Yes, there are. There are many published studies, and the National Biodiesel Board at biodiesel.org is an excellent resource to find some of the most recent studies. I believe that as we do look at renewable fuels and things like biodiesel, if we look at the full life cycle, including the land impact of the fuel source, the product, if you will. So from the soybean planting and how the life cycle of the bean returns to and captures carbon in the environment, we find that the use of biofuels like soy-based biodiesel can have a very positive impact and reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that would occur from petroleum-based diesel by as much as 80%. So the life cycle of using renewable farm crops for producing fuel is one that is well documented in the literature. And it has a bit of a different considerations than the use of corn to produce ethanol. The biodiesel soybean product is fully accounted for and utilized, and the oil is extracted for the use as the fuel, and the solid material that comes from the plant matter is used for animal feed and other uses. So it is a nice system.
Another question related to biodiesel. How will biodiesel compete with the investments being made today in CNG? And as far as the environment, which is better for the environment regarding CNG and biodiesel?
Well, let's see. There is a number of aspects of this question, and I would encourage Ezra you to chime in as well. I think, first of all, the extraction and availability of natural gas is dependent on where you are, and most recently in the U.S. and other parts of the world through some new technologies known as hydraulic fracturing. Natural gas has become more accessible than it has in the past from drilling conventional wells. This practice has made gas more available, and that is the situation that we have in the U.S. market. And a good portion of that gas is going towards industrial and manufacturing and heating purposes, and considerably less of that is going towards transportation. There are some niche applications of natural gas as a transport fuel, but I think the comparison that folks have to do relative to how it works with biodiesel is a very challenging one. With biodiesel, you don't have to make changes to the engines. The fuel can be used immediately in any diesel engine of any kind, pretty much without any considerations, whereas natural gas can only be used in natural gas designed engines, and it does require additional infrastructure and fuel handling concerns. So I would say that, as was indicated in a previous slide, the challenges that the world faces in terms of reducing carbon emissions are significant, that will require all of these technologies to live up to their maximum potential and to help reduce emissions of CO2 through becoming more efficient and in some cases displacing other less efficient fuels and technologies. I think that the biodiesel offers an ability to have a broader impact more quickly. Natural gas can have a very positive impact on the fleets and places that it can be invested in, which right now is still on a very limited basis, at least domestically here in the U.S. But both fuels hold promise to help the nation and the world achieve its goals of reducing CO2 emissions.
Alan, if I could just give just a small bit of information, a little bit of background on the biodiesel component there. The U.S. EPA has designated biodiesel, or first-generation bio-based diesel, as an advanced biofuel, and that category means that it is achieves at least a 50% reduction in carbon intensity. And as Alan mentioned earlier, there are second-generation or renewable diesel fuels coming online. The City of San Francisco and the City of Oakland have committed to transition to the use of renewable diesel fuels, or the second-generation bio-based diesel fuels, and these have the capability of further reducing carbon intensity, sometimes up to 90%, or sometimes it's even a net positive.
Thank you, Ezra. Just a few more questions coming in. We did have a question that came in on the impact of the U.S. public and the VW situation and how it can affect the move towards clean diesel. Alan?
Yes. We have provided a public statement on this a few weeks ago, and I would commit everyone on this call to visit our website and to review that official statement. I think as to whether or not the situation regarding Volkswagen and the emissions from diesel engines in the recent years that's now the subject of investigation, I believe that because the challenges we face are so great and to reduce emissions of carbon dioxide, that clean diesel is absolutely a technology that will endure and will be required to achieve these greater reductions that are envisioned in making vehicles more fuel efficient and lower in emissions. While it certainly will have I think a short-term impact on the markets because of some vehicle availability issues, I think that this is a question that we would like to revisit 6 months from now and see kind of where things are. But generally speaking, nothing has changed about the challenge that we face. As a nation in the U.S., there is a dramatic push to more fuel-efficient vehicles, going from today's 30 couple mile per gallon standard to fleet standard up to well over 50 miles per gallon. And many of the gains are going to come from improvements in gasoline engines and expanded use of diesel engines. Some improvements and progress towards the goal will come from the use of electric vehicles, and some will come from the use of hybrid vehicles. But by and large, I think we are very confident that the new generation of clean diesel technology is able to meet these challenges, and this particular situation involving one manufacturer is really not reflective on the broader use of clean diesel in the U.S. I think that on a broader scale, we expect to see more diesel models introduced in the U.S., and we will be watching very carefully about how those models are accepted. But they will provide customers with an important choice, one that does not force them to sacrifice the size or type of vehicle that they want and still achieve the fuel efficiency and performance that they expect. So we're very confident that on a long-term basis, clean diesel technology is a viable choice for consumers here in the U.S. and I would say also around the world.
Okay, Alan, we have another question that's come in relating to testing and development. As clean diesel develops, both the fuel and the engine hardware, what will the challenges be for engineers working in the testing environment? For example, people working in labs testing engines and fuel technology before it reaches mass production stage.
I think it's fair to say that there is a new level of global conversation about vehicle emissions testing that has been brought about from really two things. One is a developing discussion in Europe looking at real driving emissions. Over the last several years, there has been efforts there to try and understand a way forward to test vehicles and certify them that in conditions that are more representative of how they're actually used and operated in the real world. And this is a situation that I think every country will be facing, and we are facing in the United States as well. And that is to try and understand what a lab certification test means relative to how a vehicle operates in the real world. We know that the laboratory tests are not perfect, but they are the best thing that we have at the moment, and I think that industry is working collaboratively with regulators and NGOs and other stakeholders to make improvements in those test procedures and how things are certified. And I would expect that the next couple of years we'll see some of the fruits of that effort. But I think it's fair to say that there will be much more emphasis on the certification testing process and the validation of that. And then the secondary issue, as I mentioned, the rectifying the I should say the reconciliation of how vehicles are operated in the real world versus what the lab tests tell us, because it is the lab tests and the certification that that are incorporated into so many models that produce numbers like we're talking about here today on CO2 emission reductions on an international and global scale. So the test procedures and understandings in the lab translate very quickly to large-scale public policy. So I think they're going to be really, really important in the future.
Great. We have another question that's come in relating to funding, particularly where to get access to information relating to federal funding for renewables. I believe that the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Division of the Department of Energy has some useful information on federal funding for renewable transportation fuels such as bio-based diesel fuels. And I understand that there is a blender's tax credit that offers incentives for producers to bring fuels to market. but a good first source would be the Department of Energy. Alan, did you have anything to add on this question?
No, I think that's exactly right.
Great. Okay, does anybody else have any further questions for Alan? Oh, we did have one just come in, our website. Yes, please visit our website. That's www.dieselforum.org.
Nazar, I had one come in via the chat, and it was relative to California. What do you envision happening to the mandates in California relative to eliminating fossil fuels in transportation?
Well, that is a question that the forum has worked on extensively this year, and for those that are not well versed in this area, I would also direct you to our website to understand some of the more recent work that we were involved in Sacramento regarding petroleum reduction strategies in California. I believe that it is important to establish goals as part of efforts to reduce CO2 emissions and to think broadly about what is a future that one could envision. I think it's also important, and as California is, I believe, starting to have some understanding of that, really all these technologies are going to be important in achieving the objectives, and particularly those that achieve near-term objectives. I think we could find ourselves in a situation where we find much more diversity of transportation fuels. Today we have predominantly gasoline and diesel fuel. Certainly in the next decade you would imagine that there would be a high level of use of more renewable fuels and some increase in the electric vehicle market as well. But I think that it's not just the specific goal on how to reduce or eliminate fossil fuels. I think this conversation really has to be about which technologies deliver the greatest benefits and are most efficient and suited to adapt to this changing future that we have, both as a climate and both the adapting policy world. And we may very well see diesel engines in 5, 10, 15 years that are not running on diesel fuel at all. And they may be running on 100% renewables like the city of San Francisco and the city of Oakland. These are not laboratory experiments. These are things that are happening today. So I think there's a growing recognition that it's important to set future goals that may seem rather at the far end of reach or maybe not practical at all at the current time. But it's also equally important to assess what can be done in the near term and to implement those kinds of strategies as quickly as possible, because there is a significant value to everyone of efficiency and emissions reduction, efficiency gains and emission reductions that happen on a near-term basis. I would say even more so than ones that might be projected to happen in 20 or 30 years if everything goes as planned, because often things don't go as planned. And so I think that there will be a great diversity of transportation fuels in California and other parts of the world eventually. Whether or not there's a complete elimination of fossil fuels, I think that's a very bold prediction, and one that is, I don't think, well supported by history. But you know, we are fortunate with the diesel engine and technology and what manufacturers have been able to do to provide a platform of efficiency and near zero emissions to go forward. So whether you want to burn soybean-based oil, perhaps you have access to animal fats, perhaps you are near an algae farm, perhaps you have the ability to produce fuel from jatropha or some other renewable feedstock. The diesel engine's efficiency still endures today, and using these advanced kinds of fuels and practices, I think, will bring really more economic gain and more access to cleaner air throughout the world, and the diesel can be the foundation of that.
Great. We had a statement come in, Alan. Perhaps you can provide some commentary. The greenhouse gas problem is easy to state but hard to solve. For example, needing to address population growth. There's some concern that 2 billion might be the sustainable number for population growth. There's some concern that grid power should involve a greater reliance on nuclear. And more to the discussion here, DME, dimethyl ether, is a better diesel cycle alternative relative to petroleum-based diesel. Do we have any thoughts there, Alan?
You know, again, I think there's always some great innovation going on out there, and I think many of us are aware of some recent efforts by the Volvo Group to investigate and develop dimethyl ether as a alternative transportation fuel, and they have plowed some really great ground on this. I think at the moment that's one of many technologies that's being considered for the future. So you would imagine that that could be a viable choice at some point in the future as well. But again, I think the future is more about the diversity of fuels and technologies and matching ones to where it makes sense. And I think this is one of the challenges that must be faced when you look at a very broad global consideration. There's such disparity in things like mobility and basic access to electricity and clean drinking water that how do you bring those things to many parts of the world in a rapid kind of way? And there, I think, are great potential out there. And to do it, you're going to have all these kind of things. You may have better access to certain kinds of fuels or things like DME in some parts of the world than others. And those are the parts that should optimize towards that. So I think that's going to be really more the norm in the future.
We have a question here on the age of the fleet. When looking at new clean diesel in comparison to older diesel, what is the market penetration of both? How far behind is clean diesel in the market, and what are the biggest obstacles?
Okay, well, that's one we just happen to know a little bit about, and as we understand it, having looked at this is going to be a U.S.-based response here, that in the United States today, 37% of all the commercial trucks class 3 through 8 registered on the road today are 2007 and newer. So that means that 63% are older than 2007. And also, though, we also know that about 22% of all the commercial trucks registered on the road in the U.S. today are 2010 and newer, and that's a subset of the 37%. So what we find is that the penetration is increasing for the new technology diesel engines, and it is a function of the economy and the demand for trucking services in the market. But we are seeing some pretty large numbers last year in new truck sales, and I think that when we run these numbers again at the end of 2015, we're going to see that percentage increase, as it has each of the last 3 years that we've been doing the research. So the penetration of new technology is good. In some states, actually, it's quite beyond that even. For example, in Indiana, right in the nation's heartland, I believe that well over 50% of the trucks registered in Indiana today are 2007 and newer. So there is a good uptake of the new technology, and that's, I think, because of manufacturers have produced vehicles that customers, truckers want to buy, that are more fuel efficient than ever and more productive than ever, and those are the important things that the truckers care about. They also happen to be near zero emissions, so those are important features as well.
Just to jump in, there's a lot of questions about whether people will have access to the presentation and the slides. And yes, we are going to be posting both the presentation as well as the recorded, recorded webinar on our website, which is dieselforum.org, and you will be receiving an email with access to all of that as well. So you should be receiving that within the next day. So look for that in your email and then on our website as well.
Great. Kristen, do we have time for one more question?
Yes, I believe we have we can fit in another question.
Okay. One just came in. Will the Diesel Forum be in Paris? And if so, what message will you be taking to Paris to promote clean diesel technology? Unfortunately, we will not have a physical presence in Paris, but we will actively be engaged in social media, and we have a list of the formal civil society functions taking place that have a tie-in to all of the messages that you heard about today, and we will be delivering our message by way of social media and other venues to get that information into the hands of policymakers who will be in Paris. And Kristen, perhaps you want to talk a little bit about our social media effort?
Yes, we've been tracking all of the conversations as well as the schedule in Paris and have a lot of social media commentary going on that. And we encourage you to follow us on social media at Diesel Tech Forum, and on Facebook as well, and comment on your participation in today's event as well using the hashtags Clean Diesel and COP21.
Very nice. Well, a few concluding remarks, if we might. And first of all, that is to thank you, the audience, for your time and attention and participating with us today, no matter where you are around the world. I think as we have tried to demonstrate here, this is a significant challenge that is being faced by the nation's leaders as they gather in Paris next week to come up with a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the future. Hopefully we have provided some basis for understanding that why diesel engines are the prime power source in key sectors of the global economy. What does that mean? We also are hopeful that it's clear that this is a new clean technology that's available to any part of the world that can get it. And that means first, though, having the availability of ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel. This is a critical part of achieving these kinds of goals and performance that we've talked about today. So having ultra-low-sulfur diesel fuel is paramount. The commitment that the United States is making in Paris next week, as Ezra alluded to earlier, depends largely on improving efficiency in power plants, commercial trucks, as well as passenger vehicles. And in two of those three categories, one in particular, the truck side, diesel plays a very significant role, and that's expected to continue. On the passenger car side, diesel cars in the U.S. today make up about 4% of the total vehicle population, and we expect that to perhaps double or triple in the next 5 to 10 years, depending on the economy and fuel prices and other things. But these commitments that the U.S. is making do depend to some extent on adoption and use of more diesel technology. And finally, it is that transformation of diesel engines to being very low emissions and having the ability to use a variety of renewable fuels makes the technology one that is uniquely suited to help all parts of the world achieve their climate objectives and growing economies, mobility of their people, and quality of life. So we urge everyone to participate in the process and to educate and share with those around you. And we're happy to respond to additional requests and information beyond today's event, and hope that you'll visit us through our website at dieselforum.org for all the latest information. So with that, thank you again all for attending, and we bid you all a good day, good evening, and thanks again for participating.